Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to this course, History and Philosophy of Science by Mr. Onyeka Uzonu. Introduction. I welcome you once again into the course. The course is all about looking at science and looking at philosophy of science from another angle. And yes, we all know that the course will be taught by the three lecturers, and I'll be the third lecturer. I'll be coming in from the parts that have to do with philosophy and science. The other two lecturers will be taking you on the part that concerns science, which includes the likes of biology, chemistry, physics, statistics, geography, and so on and so forth. And then in this other part where I'll be coming from the angle of philosophy, and then we would be looking at the business of philosophy in science or in the sciences. And here we'll try to undertake what actually philosophy is doing in the sciences. Why do we have philosophy talking about the sciences? What is it going to do there? So, a lot of persons have the background view that philosophy is all about doubting God and saying and making arguments, unnecessary arguments. But no, we would see through this course that philosophy does a lot more, and it has a lot to do when it comes to the sciences. So before we go in, I ask the question, what is philosophy of science? But before we answer the question, what is philosophy of science? First and foremost, we should answer the question, what is philosophy? The question, what is philosophy? Yes, it can be said that philosophy is derived from two Greek words, which are philo and sophia, which means love of wisdom. But this is philosophy in a layman's term. Philosophy is more than love of wisdom. And so we say that philosophy is a critical and logical reflection on realities. In other words, we can say that philosophy cuts across all aspects of reality. It looks at every area that have to do with human endeavor, including this particular course that has to do with the sciences. And then we say that philosophy underlines all areas of life using reason as its major tool. Unlike some disciplines that makes use of faith, for instance, in the religious aspect, or let's say in the sciences that make use solely of experiments, even though, yes, experiments can be um, bracketed under reason, or reason can be bracketed under the aspect of experiment, but philosophy makes use of reflective observation, which is guided by reason to what? To look at realities. So reason is the major tool philosophy makes use of. And then we say it is also a constructive activity aimed at justifying claims and belief. So philosophy is not does not disconstruct. It is actually a constructive activity, because many people would always say that philosophy is always there to criticize and debunk a lot of things. Like for instance, people will say that philosophers will say they don't believe in God and stuff like that. But no, philosophy is a constructive activity. It comes in to question, why is this thing like this? Why not make it this way? And then if it's this way, why not see another way to better it this way? So philosophy, and then when you make claims, philosophy comes into constructively asks you to justify these claims and belief that you are stating. That is why we say, for instance, that philosophers are the best persons who give better justification about realities. For instance, a philosopher will say that philosophers have interpreted the world. It is just left for you and I to move the world. So we say that lastly, philosophy plays the role of a second order activity by questioning the claims and doctrine of first order activities such as religion, law, politics, morality, and science. Now, we have what we call first order activities and second order activity. Now, philosophy is a second order activity in the sense that philosophy looks at every other discipline from a second order perspective. This is a better way to say this is that as a philosopher, you cannot philosophize in a vacuum. That is, you cannot philosophize in emptiness. You must philosophize on something. And that thing you are philosophizing on is a first order activity. And then bringing philosophy into it, that's bringing the use of critical and logical reflective mode into it, means that you are coming in now as a second order to look at that particular area or that particular reality. And then, if, for instance, we can say religion you can see somebody philosophizing on the existence of God, for instance. Now, the existence of God can be discussed in the department of religion, and you see somebody coming in now with philosophy, and then it becomes philosophy of religion and no longer religion. Let's take, for instance, politics. You have what is happening in the political world today. Then you ask yourself, what is the best form of government? You've seen philosophers come into that particular question that have to do with politics, and then they offer systems that can actually be the best way to rule a nation. That's why you have the likes of democracy, aristocracy, oligarchy. You know, these are forms and systems of government that were propounded by thinkers and philosophers. And so, philosophy cuts across all disciplines. We usually say that philosophy is the mother of all disciplines because every discipline started from philosophy. Every discipline cut out from philosophy. And so we conclude by saying that philosophy of science is philosophy coming in as a second order activity to look at the activities of the scientists or the scientific world. What is the relationship between philosophy and science? Simply placed, the relationship between philosophy and science is that as a second order activity, it appraises the workings and claims of the scientists in order to justify scientific theories and methods. So what this means is that we are trying to look at some of the claims that the scientists make, some of the things they tell us. How do we justify these things? How do we even know that these things they're telling us is true? And how do we know that there's something that they are free from the influence of something by giving us some claims. Let's take, for instance, if you come to medicine, you go to the pharmacist when you are sick, and then you tell the pharmacist, oh, I have headache and I have back pain. And then the pharmacist will just say, okay, okay, do you have these symptoms and these symptoms also? You say yes, or you may say no. And then the pharmacist will just tell, okay, you need to buy this drug, this drug, this drug, and then mix all of them and then give to you. You just take it and swallow. How do you know that you're not just swallowing chalk? And how do you know that the components in that drug would treat your sickness? And then even if it treats your sickness, does it have any implication on your health or your body system in the longer run? You know, just like this HIV drug that is being given today, for instance, where they say, let's take for instance, somebody was raped, and then they now say, okay, because they don't know if the person that raped her is HIV negative or positive, then they gave her anti HIV drug so that she would take anti HIV. And then research have shown that you cannot take this drug at least all the time. If not, people would have been taking it. But because if you take it all the time, for instance, in men, it has been recorded that it can lead to impotency, you know. So these are the implications of some drugs, and these are claims of the sciences. We need to look at these claims with a critical lens. And then the methods in which they carry out all these things, all these researches, we also need to look at them. You have the COVID-19 For example, definitely somebody was in his lab. We heard the stories that somebody was in the lab in China, scientists trying to make breakthroughs, and then all of a sudden COVID was released, and then half of the world, like world population reduced because a lot of persons died from COVID. And so we need to look at the methods in which these scientists carry out their researches. Are these methods free from danger of harming human persons? What is the dangers involved in this type of method of carrying this research? So and so many, so on and so forth. And I would say, in lay terms, philosophy criticizes, dissects, and deconstructs or analyze what the scientist does. Why philosophy of science? We delve into philosophy of science because there are epistemological and ontological implications of philosophy of science. So I believe that you know that we have major branches of philosophy, which includes metaphysics, logic, epistemology, and ethics, aesthetics, and so on and so forth. We have these branches in philosophy. And then we say in metaphysics, we have ontological and cosmological branch of metaphysics in philosophy. But here now, we are trying to answer the question, why philosophy of science? And then we say we actually have philosophy of science because there are some epistemological and ontological implications of this. And then looking at the epistemological implication, first of all and foremost, what is epistemology? Epistemology in philosophy means theories of knowledge, gotten from two Greek words, episteme and logos. Episteme, which means knowledge, and then logos, which means study. So you have the study of knowledge. And so we say, in the epistemological implication, how valid are scientific methods, claims, and assertion? It's just like what I said before. How do you justify the claim that somebody comes and tell you this thing is this is what it does, this is what it does, this is what it does, and then the person gives it to you? How do you justify those claims? How do you know that what the scientist is telling you is true? You know, So there are so much scientific experiments, scientific advancements, advancements in technology that are being shipped out into the environment, into the communities and societies every day. And then the science is it is whatever the scientist tells us that we get to accept as the knowledge that is behind that stuff, that particular experiment or advancement. And so we also have the second one, ontological implications. How do we demarcate ontology, which means ontos, being, study of being? And then we say, how do we demarcate between science and non-science? Now you have native doctors, you have, when, so let's take for instance, when it wants to rain, and then you see people in the village, they have an event and it wants to rain, and they're running helter skelter, and they say, go and meet this person, that this person knows what to do, and you just know what to give to him, and the rain, he will push the rain away. And only now you see the person would mix, sorry for using trying to go into using Igbo terminologies. You see the person trying to mix some natural things, maybe leaves or whatever, and then all of a sudden you just see wind from nowhere to push away the rain to somewhere else. And you then ask yourself, is this actually science or is it magic? So most of the experiments the scientists are carrying out, is it science? Is it really science, or are they magic? Yes, we say that the major method of the scientific world is through experimentation and observation. And then the major method of philosophy is through reason, which is guided on observation and reflection. And so we say that we need to know how to demarcate between what is really science and what is not science. Let's take, for instance, another example. You go to the park, you want to move from Oka to Onitsha, and then you see one man, he comes in and then say, take this drug, if you have back pain, if you have neck pain, if you have pain in the eye, if you have malaria, if you have typhoid, if you are feeling something running inside your body, if you cannot urinate, if your urination is not pure, if you cannot use the restroom very well, like if you want to reduce weight, take this drug. One drug is able to, according to him, can cure all these things. Now, how do you justify that type of claim? So these are the things, the implications that back up the reason why we should have philosophy of science. So we also say, therefore, philosophy of science is necessary because it addresses the ingenuities in the activities of the science which are not plainly glaring to the layman. For example, the advent of phones against African communal living, the ethical implication of IVF, biotechnology, AI, which means artificial intelligence, and the method of scientific research. Now, so here we're saying that there are some things that people do not see, laymen do not see, but the philosopher sees these things because he's coming in with a critical lens. And so it is because the layman do not see these things. That is why we need to have philosophy of science, where philosophy comes in to point out to those things. Let's take for instance, the first example here says the advent of phones against African communal living. Back then in the 80s, we don't used to have phones. What we used to have is letter writing. The way we communicate was through letter writing, you know. But then the world continued to advance and evolve in such a way that from phones we had telephones, from telephones we even had business centers where people now go, you stand, you make call, tell you your call lasted for 1 minute, you pay 20 naira. And then from there, we begin to have GSMs. You know, people now could have phones, get phones, mobile phones, and stuff. And then phones moved from the use of likes of Alcatel, Samsung, Motorola. You know that these phones could not perform social media functions. And then today now we have iPhones, we have Android phones, we have we have smartphones. Let me use smartphones for instance as a general word for all of them. And then these smartphones help with better features that you could use a simple application to communicate to somebody. You could use a simple application like WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the rest of them. You use these applications to communicate to your friends, to your families. You do video calls. You see that the world has changed, the world has advanced. It's not the way it used to be in the 80s. Now, this on one side, and then let's go to the other side. Back then in the 80s and in the early 90s, when people come home every December, let's come down to our Igbo place where people come home every December. You see everybody will be rushing home to go back to their house, to their villages rather. You see them rushing home. And then you remember that when food used to be served for children, for instance, food used to be served in a tray, in a big tray, like children are being then everybody eats from that tray, you know. But today, I believe that does not happen anymore. We don't get to see that happen in our world today. When people come home, that is if they come home, they spend time with their phones. People are not ready to associate with other families. They just chat up everybody and just feel like okay, that's end. Yes, the world has advanced and then it has eliminated that um idea of we coming to see ourselves physically, but it has eliminated that African communal mode of existence, that African communal way of living, that you come home every December, you see your brother, you smile, everybody's living together, every food is being made together, you know. But today, the world, that African communal existence is being threatened. Now, another example, the ethical implication of IVF. Yes, it is important that we look at some ethical implications of the activities of the scientists, especially in the IVF. IVF, which involves taking semen from a man, putting it in a woman, or taking eggs from a woman, you know, trying to create a baby from the away from the traditional way of creating a baby, which has to do with sexual intercourse. Now, These things are experiments and they are carried out on human beings. Is there any ethical justification to carrying out this experiment? What if in the first instance these things were tried, the first person it was tried on, the experiment, it was the person that was used as a lab rat? Can we justify that claim that that person should be used as a lab rat? You know, biotechnologies, for instance, another example is biotechnologies. You see nations making nuclear weapons, nuclear bombs, and then these bombs, where would they be used? They are going to be used on another society, because when you ask the societies like US and Russia why they have nuclear weapons, they'll tell you it is because they want to protect their country away from protect their country from external attacks. And then you are creating bombs that can wipe millions of lives. Why would people be going into that type of research? Research that the end goal is to kill people, you know. So is there any rational justification behind this type of scientific experiments? And then you see them still carrying out more scientific advancements in nuclear weapons, something that they just say, okay, once we drop this bomb, bam, the whole of Nigeria will be wiped out. Come on, why would people be carrying out researches that has the potentiality of killing people, millions of people, thousands, you know? And then we also have AI, artificial intelligence. The world is advancing today, and then artificial intelligence is taking over from machines, from the mechanical age. So we have robotics coming into the society gradually, taking part in shaping the way our world will become. And then we are not looking at the ethical implications of this AI. For instance, if a robot, robots now are becoming part of our lives. If a robot kills somebody accidentally, who is going to be responsible for that death? Is it the robot, or is it the company that produces that robot? Let me give you a clearer example. There's a man called Elon Musk. He's one of the richest man in the world today, and then he owns Tesla. He owns a company called Tesla, and that company is being known for producing renewable energies. So they make a lot of things like cars. So let's use cars as an example. Now, in the cars being made by Tesla, they don't run on fuel. They actually run on renewable energy, such as you can charge the car like the way you charge your phones, or you can use solar to recharge the car. And then these cars are also made in more advanced ways that you don't even need to drive the car. The car drives itself by using GPS and some sensor motors around it. So this car is responsible for driving itself. Now let's give an example that this car one day is driving the owner on the road and then hits somebody and the person dies. Who is going to be responsible for the death of that person? Is it the owner of the car? Is it the company? Is it the AI in that car? So there are a lot of questions to answer when it comes to the scientific world. And the philosopher is there to point out all these things, because the layman is just there to accept everything. Say, okay, you have introduced this one. Oh, wow, wonderful. No, no, no. The philosopher is there with his lens of critical reasoning to look at these activities of the scientist. So in conclusion, lastly, conclusion, say that philosophy is the mother of all sciences, the mother of all disciplines, and these disciplines include the sciences. And just like a mother would always want to guide her children to in the way they act and the way they do things, philosophy is there to guide the sciences. And in this process of guiding the sciences, philosophy have laid down some foundations of methodology that the scientist needs to follow. And in our next class, we'll be looking at these foundations, and then we'll be able to ascertain if these foundations, if the scientists also follow these foundations in their experiment. So I believe that we've done justice by introducing philosophy of science to you. I've been able to do justice by introducing philosophy of science to you. But in a nutshell of summarizing, we say that philosophy is coming in to the business of the sciences as a second order activity, to look at the activities of the sciences, which is a first order activities, and which are first order activities. And then we also say that there are various reasons why philosophy comes in, because these reasons run into epistemological and ontological implications, and they also run into ethical and societal implications of the activities of the scientists. And so we need to look at these activities from the philosopher's lens, which have to do with reason, critical, logical, and systematic reasoning. So with this, I will say have a nice day. In the next class, we'll be looking at the foundations of philosophy of science. Thank you.